Just a quick disclaimer before I get into the video. I'm not a flight instructor or an examiner. Please don't take my advice as to how to fly an airplane. I'm far from an instructor or an examiner. This video is just for entertainment purposes. So please don't take my advice as any credible advice when it comes to your training. Hi everybody, how's it going? Welcome back to another video. Hope you guys are doing well. In this video, we're going to talk about how I prepare for my commercial pilot check ride. My commercial pilot check ride is scheduled for tomorrow afternoon at 2:30 p.m. And I'm a little bit nervous, but I think that's normal, right? So I'm going to share with you a few things that I do to kind of prepare myself for the check ride and some of the documents that I carry. I'll look through the Transport Canada commercial pilot license flight test guide on the Transport Canada website. We'll kind of go through that to see, some of the items that are going to be tested and, what we need in terms of documentation. So basically I did my commercial pilot written exam just last week on the 20th, and I passed that, fortunately. So now this week, tomorrow, I have scheduled with an examiner for my commercial pilot check ride. So going through the Transport Canada flight test guide, which is kind of available for everybody to view if we just, just on the transport website, just the commercial pilot check. Before I get into the video, I want to congratulate each and every one of you who's made it this far and are preparing for the commercial pilot check ride. It's not an easy journey, but if you're here, congratulations to you. So to start off, we'll go over some of the things that I carry with myself to prepare for this commercial pilot license check ride. So to start off, we always want to carry our aviation document booklet, our ADB, and this I got my private pilot license last year, but I just got my ADB I think 2 months ago. So they have Transport Canada has a huge back order going on, and they're kind of slow with things right now. So I was lucky enough to get this ADB, so I'm happy for that. Next, here I have my medical. So you need your medical. For your commercial pilot, you need your class 1 medical certificate. So so you need your class 1 medical certificate, and so class 1. You need your class 1 medical certificate in order to be a commercial pilot. And last but not least, I have my radio operator's radio license. So these are kind of the three mandatory things that I carry with myself on a day-to-day when I'm going flying. And I'll need these for my flight test as well. The examiner will probably ask me questions about these and the validity periods of my medical and whatnot. So each commercial pilot check ride will start off with the ground portion. The ground portion will cover things like the aircraft status and the airworthiness of the aircraft. What kind of documentation do you need when you go flying, or some recency requirements, and if you're able to take passengers with you, what you need to do, what kind of mandatory equipment must your airplane have. So all those things, in weight and balance, and some navigation questions as well. So I'm part of an integrated airline transport license program. So I don't have to do the navigation portion of my commercial flight test because I did my navigational progress ride about 2 months ago. So that was a separate examination just specifically for the nav portion of my exam. So I had an examiner sit beside me, and we did a nav prog ride from to a different airport and back, and did all the stuff, kind of just the map related stuff on that check ride, so I wouldn't have to worry about that. And that's exercise 23, I believe, on the flight test guide, so if you guys want to refer to that. So I wouldn't need to do that, and you wouldn't either if you're part of an integrated program. Apart from that, everything else still applies to me. I have to do everything else. So first there'll be a ground portion, and once I pass that, so the examiner will grade you on that portion on a scale of 1 to 4. And fours are obviously, you're great, nothing wrong with, what your explanations are or what you did. And threes are basically, you still know what you're doing. Maybe there's some minor errors in what you did. 2 can be considered a major error, but still a 2 is a pass. You're allowed to, I think you're allowed to get 4 2s on the entire flight test. And 1, if you get any 1s, that's a complete, just a fail. Like you can't move forward from that area, so you got to repeat the test. So once you kind of go over the ground portion of the flight test, you do all the, an hour of briefing, pre-flight briefing with the examiner, and once they're happy, they'll come outside, you do a walk around the aircraft, and they'll ask you questions about the aircraft systems. Could be the fuel system, could be the mixture, could be the prop, could be the engine, could be the electrical system, the landing gear, anything like the fuel pump, fuel prime, anything related to the airplane, they can ask you as fair game. So you really got to know those well. Another thing that you have to know that they can ask you on the ground is emergency procedures. They can, ask you what would you do in case, there was a cabin fire. What would you do if you saw a low oil pressure and a high oil temperature. So you have to be able to answer these questions and then back them up with the emergency checklist which you have in the aircraft. Once the examiner is satisfied with, the ground portion, then you guys go flying. So once you go flying, right from the beginning, you want to make sure that you're doing anything that you're doing while flying the aircraft, make sure you're verbalizing it, because you might be doing something, but the examiner might not know the rationale why you're doing that. And in your head, you're doing the right thing, but because the examiner doesn't know, he might not be able to grade you, evaluate you, fairly on that, right? So make sure you verbalize everything, and kind of what really helps me is talking to myself. So I'll kind of let the examiner know that, I'm going to talk to myself during this exam, and hopefully that's okay. And they're very flexible. They're okay. They want you to do, how you do it and whatever you're comfortable with. So I basically, will talk to myself throughout the whole process. I'll say every checklist item, and whatever I'm about to say, whatever I'm about to do, I'll verbalize first so the examiner knows, what I'm about to do. So once you get into the airplane, you start the engine, you start rolling. That's when your test starts, the flight test starts. Make sure, don't forget to check your brakes, check your instruments, and don't forget to do your radio calls properly, your run up, everything is in accordance. One thing that is frequently missed by students is when they're taxiing, they forget their wind inputs. So even if there's no wind, even if the wind's very light, just tell them that, what, the wind is very light, it's coming from this direction, and here are my wind inputs. They really look for that. And I know some of the students who've been called out by some examiners saying that, oh, where's the wind coming from today? So they really, want you to do all that stuff. Yeah, so remember to make all those calls. And typically when you start, the examiner, it depends on the examiner. Some examiners will start off the flight test with the performance takeoff. So either a short field takeoff or a soft field takeoff. And once you do your performance takeoff, you will probably go to your practice area and do your air work. And this is kind of or if you have to do the navigation process of this exercise 23, if you're not in an integrated program, then you'll probably, the order might be a little different. You'll do the nav portion, and then you'll head to the practice area for your air work exam. So once you kind of do your performance takeoff, the examiner starts grading you based on 1 to 4 again, based on how straight you are, how much you drifted off the center line, and your climb out speed. You want to climb out at VX, VY, you want to tell them, and you want to maintain that speed. It's +10, -5, that's the buffer you have, so you want to stay as close as possible to that speed. And you have to follow all the, depending on which airport you're at, controlled, uncontrolled airspace, wherever you are, and you have to make sure that you follow that circuit pattern accordingly, and you make calls accordingly to that airport. So once you depart the circuit, you're going to head towards the practice area, and you'll start off with some air work. So some of the air work that they have here, you have your steep turns, you have slow flight, you have stalls, you have spins, you have unusual attitudes. That's under a partial panel, so they'll block off the attitude indicator and the heading indicator. And you have time turns, which are also done under partial panel, which will be hide the attitude indicator and the heading indicator. And you have your forced approach, you have your precautionary landing, and you also have to do kind of like a GPS interception. So if your aircraft has a GPS, then the examiner will give you a waypoint, and on that waypoint you plug it into the GPS, and you sync the GPS with the CDI. So you press the OBS, and you kind of identify where you are in relation to that waypoint. and then the examiner will give you kind of like an inbound track or an outbound track, or and then you have to find a way to intercept that track. And they'll ask you some questions related to, okay, how do you know you've crossed the waypoint, or how do you know if it's to your left or right? So be prepared to answer all those questions. I think the most difficult thing that a lot of students have an issue with in this flight test are steep turns. Steep turns can get a little tricky. So what works for me is kind of have a visual reference outside, and on your attitude indicator, pitch up to about 5 degrees. Primarily look outside, but keep your pitch up to about 5 degrees, and add power accordingly as you enter the turn to kind of offset that loss of lift when you get into the turn. So add a little bit of power, maybe 50 to 100 RPM, but just keep that nose at 5 degrees. That will really make sure you maintain your altitude, and adding that power will help you with your airspeed so you don't lose too much. So commercial steep turns, you got to do a 180 back and then 180 out. So make sure you level off at the heading that you started off at. You have a buffer of about plus or minus 10 degrees, I believe. So that's one area where people struggle with, and forced approach is another area that people struggle with. So for forced approach, really just try to organize yourself, follow the steps that we have, and don't rush yourself. There's tons of time. These practice aircrafts, these training aircrafts love to glide, so don't rush yourself. I know it's an emergency situation, and it's kind of, we don't have enough time, but when you kind of rush, you miss steps, right? So just focus on each and every step, and then kind of decide what you're going to do. Pick your field accordingly, or first go for your best glide speed, then pick your speed, then do a cause check, and then make your distress signal, flick your ELT on, and don't forget about your passenger briefing, and don't forget to pull out your emergency checklist. So once that's done, you'll kind of come back after all the airwork's done, and you'll do circuits. And in the circuits, the examiner will ask you to do either one or the other, soft field landing or a shore field landing. So I prefer to do a soft field landing because you have more of a buffer with, landing. I think when you do a soft field landing, you have to just specify your aiming point and land within 1/3 of the runway. When you do a shore field landing, they simulate a 50-foot obstacle somewhere, and then whatever you say is your touchdown zone, you either have you can't be minus 50 or plus 100. So you got to be within that 150 mark, right? So for me, soft field landing is, kind of more lenient, so I prefer to do that. And once you do that, then you'll do a normal or another performance takeoff. No, yeah, you'll do another performance takeoff, different than the one that you did the first time when you took off, when you went to go do air work. But this time, yeah, you'll do another performance takeoff, and you'll do a P180, a precision 180. So once you're beaming your touchdown point late downwind, you're gonna call your touchdown point, and you're gonna pull your power. From that point onwards, you're going to go for your best glide speed initially, and then you're going to make the field. You're going to tell them that I want to touch down here, and your buffer is plus 400 or minus 50. So make sure you land within that and use your flaps accordingly. I honestly, personally, I don't put down my flaps, even takeoff flaps, until I'm sure that I'm going to make my field. Because once you put the flaps down, yeah, you get the initial kind of, steeper angle, but the drag really kicks in. And once the drag kicks in, you start dropping. So I don't put in my flaps until I'm dead sure that I'm going to make the field. Doesn't matter if it's very close to the runway. I could be on short final, that's when I'll drop my flaps. So keep some things to keep in mind. Once that's done, hopefully everything went well, and you're on the ground and you passed, right? Congratulations. But remember, if I could give you one advice, I mean, I have to take this advice myself. I have the flight test tomorrow. I'll let you guys know how my flight test went, by the way. So I'll share all the feedback with you. But one advice for myself and everybody else who's preparing for this check ride is, if you screw something over, or, it doesn't go as well as you wanted it to go, don't worry about it. Kind of try your best to not think about it and just put it at the back of your head and focus on all the other air exercises. Because if you keep thinking about that one exercise that you didn't do very well, you can really screw over all the other exercises that you could have done well, right? So just try to not think about that exercise and just leave it. You know what? honestly, you'll get a partial. If anything, a partial is great. All you do is on another day, you go up, you do that one thing, and you're done. So really, just put that behind you and go up for this. So what I'll do is I will kind of, you know, make a video on once hopefully I pass my flight test tomorrow. So once I'm done my flight test, I'll make a video on a detailed video on where I went wrong and what I could have done better, what the examiner asked me, how I felt it went, and any other questions. And if you guys have any questions about it, you can just comment down below and ask me, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. So for this video, I'll probably end it off here and just say that if you're going for your commercial pilot check ride, it's okay to be nervous, totally normal, but you know what, really be confident in how far you've come, and if you've been recommended by your instructor, then you can do it, right? They think you can do it, so really just stay confident, take a deep breath before the flight test. They know, they'll take into account that you're nervous, or they'll take into account that the weather conditions as well. If it's too gusty, they'll take that into account. So just try to relax, and things will go well. For now, okay, so I will end off this video here, and we'll see you on the next video. If there's any comments or concerns, please feel free to leave a comment down below, and we'll see you next time. Take care.